Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 6, 2015, the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Scott, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee of the Majority Leader. Mr. Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous materials on the subject of this special order.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize Farm Credit's 100th anniversary of supporting our rural communities and providing reliable credit to those in the agricultural industry throughout our country. Throughout this Congress, as the Chairman of the House Agriculture Committee Subcommittee on Commodity Exchanges, Energy and Credit, I've worked with Farm Credit extensively. These interactions have reaffirmed what I already knew. The Farm Credit system is made up of dedicated Americans who understand the needs and champion the values of rural America. I'm honored to represent Georgia's 8th Congressional District, most of which is farmland. A good portion of my constituents are farmers themselves or have family and friends who farm. And Georgia's 8th District is home to roughly 15% of farm credit borrowers in the state of Georgia. I myself come from an agricultural background, as both sets of my grandparents were farmers. Farm Credit has met the credit needs of many of my constituents and maintains an active presence in South and Middle Georgia, where we are leaders in Georgia's agricultural production. For a century, Farm Credit has been providing our farmers, ranchers, and rural communities with the capital they need to build and grow successfully. This centennial anniversary coincides with a time when our agricultural industry is facing significant economic challenges. Over the past few years, our farmers and rural communities have been faced with lower commodity prices, increased input costs, unstable and inconsistent international markets, all of which are placing strains on our food producers and those who provide essential services to our agricultural industry. This not only affects the producers or manufacturers, but it also has a tremendous effect on the communities in which they live and work. A strong agricultural economy is essential to the health and vitality of the communities I represent in 24 counties across South and Middle Georgia. During times like this, farmers and rural communities depend on Farm Credit, whose mission is focused on helping rural communities and agriculture grow and thrive. For example, in my home state of Georgia, young, beginning, and small farmers make up 72% of AgFirst Farm Credit's customers. While these customers represent the future of the agricultural industry, they have entered into the industry at a difficult economic time. Our nation's farmers, young and old, embody the American ideals of hard work and dedication, and their commitment to providing the food and fiber for a growing nation and needy world remains steadfast. And alongside them, Farm Credit's commitment to our agricultural future remains just as important as it was 100 years ago. Farm Credit is a critical provider of credit, not only to producers, but also to the communities they live in. They are dedicated to supporting rural communities, critical infrastructure needs such as access to clean water, efficient energy, sufficient health care facilities, and modern telecommunication services. Access to these essential services is critical to a thriving rural America. The future of our rural communities and the agricultural industry depends on a modern infrastructure which requires access to affordable and reliable financing. Additionally, I want to thank my colleagues who are here today to offer a few words and to celebrate Farm Credit Centennial. Rural communities in Georgia's 8th Congressional District, as well as the districts across this country, are stronger when their infrastructure needs are efficiently and effectively met. And Farm Credit is providing the capital with which this can be achieved. I want to say a special thank you to my co-host for tonight's special order, the ranking member of the Commodity Exchanges, Energy and Credit Subcommittee, my friend from Georgia, Mr. David Scott. And with that, I recognize the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Scott, for as much time as he shall consume.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much, Mr. Scott, whom I affectionately refer to as my cousin from Georgia and my good dear friend in addition to that. This is a remarkable 100-year observance of a truly remarkable organization that provided a great need at a great time. Imagine where we were 100 years ago. In 1916, the world teetering on the First World War, boll weevil, a lot of things happening. Just a matter of perhaps 50 years, the South recovering from the Civil War, great devastation. Enter into this picture of great need comes farm credit. So when we celebrate this 100-year anniversary, we've got to celebrate it right. We've got to let people know the importance and why this organization came into existence. And I say, Mr. Speaker, that particularly in the South, we might not have really made it as quickly in terms of our recovery as we did if it were not for farm credit. And so on this 100th anniversary, we have so much to celebrate, so many fine people. Those who started it are gone, but they built it on a solid foundation that it lasts. Agriculture is the single most important industry in the world. It's the food we eat. It is the water we drink. It is the clothes we wear. And it is the financial system that we have created. The very committee that Chairman Austin Scott and I share was birthed out of that, the commodities exchange. The South didn't have everything it needed, but it had the land, and it had the crops, it had commodities, and farm credit provided the liquidity that our farmers needed. And so there's so much to cherish in this time that we're celebrating. There's something else, too, Mr. Speaker, as we look at this. As Chairman Scott said, 72% of their loans is going to beginning new farmers. Now, why do I say that's so important? Because the number one issue that we're faced with today is the age of the average farmer. And to me and to many of us in agriculture, this is not only a farming issue, it is a national issue, that the average age of our farmers today is 60 years of age. What other industry has that? What other sector has that? That's why we have to move aggressively. And that's why I appreciate farm credit so much, because they've jumped out front. 72% of their lending capacity goes to getting young beginning farmers in. The other thing is, they're partnering with our committee and going a step further. There's so much we can do. But Mr. Speaker, it was the land grant colleges in the South that was the pivot. The 1860s and the 1890s is what pulled this country and pulled the South together. And every 5 years, we put a farm bill together. And in that farm bill, we allocate badly needed dollars to these 1890 land grant institutions, as well as to the 1860s. I mention that because we've got to get young beginning farmers, African Americans, white, all of America's people. And so what we are doing is to open up a new spending category in the Farm Bill for these 1890s, that we will be able to give loan forgiveness and scholarships to young people who will go into farming. That's how we solve this problem. And Farm Credit has the template. They're there with that other arm. Mr. Speaker, it costs $8,000 just for 1 acre of land. You can hardly get a tractor for less than $50,000. It is needed for us to be able, when these young people graduate, and they have that loan forgiveness there, they have that debt in school, in order for them to go and become farmers, they have to pay $8,000 to start just with an acre, $50,000. But if we would be able to help them, say, we will help your loan forgiveness. I mention that because the people at Farm Credit said, let me reach out a hand. Let me help Fort Valley State in Georgia to partner with the University of Georgia. Let me help Florida A&M University, land grant, to work with the University of Florida, a land grant. Let me help Alabama A&M and Tuskegee Institute work with the University of Alabama. That's how we solve this problem. And so that's why it's important for us to understand the foundation. Farm Credit was developed out of a crisis need. And here they are moving to help with another crisis need, to get more young people involved in farming. I say a national crisis because, Mr. Speaker, if we allow this to continue without addressing this highly escalating age of our farmers, we will be in serious trouble. For if we do not continue to be the leading agricultural producer in the world and have to depend on other nations to feed us, that's a national crisis. And so on this 100th anniversary, isn't it something that we celebrate Farm Credit when they ushered in and came and helped to restore and invigorate America at a great time, and they're still doing the same thing today. So with a century of experience and a focus on the future, I want to say to Farm Credit, God bless Farm Credit. God bless those 100 years. And we look for many hundred more years. And God bless the United States of America. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I again want to thank my colleague, Mr. Scott, for being here. It's been a wonderful partnership to work with you on our subcommittee. And with that, I'd like to yield as much time as he would consume to the gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Abraham.
Mr. Speaker, I first want to thank our chairman, Mr. Austin Scott, and ranking member, Mr. Davis Scott, for their leadership in bringing this vital topic to the floor. Farm credit system is not only part now of our economic security of this great nation, but I would argue it's also now part of our national security with what they provide. And we're just here to commend the cooperative owners, the employees of the farm credit system as they celebrate this 100th anniversary. The Federal Farm Loan Act of 1916 was passed by Congress and President Wilson in 1916. It was a permanent means to support the well-being and prosperity of the nation's rural communities, agricultural products of all types and sizes, and a mission it has been accomplishing every day for now a century. It plays a vital role, as you have heard my colleagues say, in the success of United States agriculture and rural communities. It has provided more than $237 billion in loans to more than 500,000 customers. And I'm one of those customers, Mr. Speaker. In fact, I'm still paying on one of the loans. The farm credit system helped me get started back in farming when I was 25 years old. And it helped me buy the land that I needed, and I still farm that land today. It's helped my family buy land that it's needed to farm. We're just a small part of a community of 1,348 barrier customers from my 5th district of Louisiana. We customers account for $354 million in credit and investments in rural Louisiana. In my state, the Farm Credit serves more than 3,600 Louisianians with a total loan volume of $645 million. What I and other farmers, creditors like about the farm credit system is that they just seem to get it. In an age where we are losing this person-to-person contact, we're losing the sincerity, I think, sometimes of the people we come in contact with, the farm credit system remains homegrown people who give out hometown loans. We know these people. We go to church with them. We eat supper with them in the South. They are the DNA of our rural communities, and that's why we trust them. We trust them to give honest and forthright advice, and they're going to do the right thing every time for you as a borrower, as a cooperative owner, and just as a friend. As you've heard from Mr. Alston Scott, Mr. Davis Scott, they are supporting the next generation of farmers by annually providing billions of dollars of loans to the young and beginning farmers. Again, the future of this country. Just like me once upon a time, through organizations like 4-H and the Future Farmers of America. It helps communities move forward by just providing vital infrastructure to bring clean water, reliable energy, and high-speed internet to places that normally would not have this available. So I'm proud to co-sponsor House Resolution 501 that commends the cooperative owners and employees of the farm credit system for their 100 years of service to our rural communities. I thank Chairman Mike Conaway, Ranking Member Colin Peterson, Representative Alston Scott, and Representative David Scott for introducing this resolution. Congratulations to the Farm Service Agency on 100 years of service. May I continue to help farmers, and may they continue to help farmers in rural America for another 100 years. I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you, and I now yield to the gentlelady from Florida, Ms. Graham, as much time as she may consume.
Thank you, Congressman Scott. Thank you to the Scott cousins for arranging this special order tonight. And Mr. Speaker, I rise to congratulate Farm Credit on their 100th anniversary. That's a significant anniversary. Earlier this year, when I visited all 14 counties in Florida's 2nd Congressional District on the first ever North Florida Farm Tour, I saw just how important the farm credit system is to each and every one of our rural communities. In the 2nd Congressional District alone, Farm Credit of Northwest Florida serves 439 borrower customers, providing more than $120 million in loans. That's helped to small businesses like Southern Craft Creamery, where I performed a workday and a hairnet making North Florida ice cream. It was very good. I recommend it to everyone. Remember Southern Craft Creamery. These small businesses and small farms aren't just growing food. They're growing our economy and creating jobs. And Mr. Speaker, Farm Credit is working to make sure the next generation of Americans are interested in farming and growing food for our growing country. I'm proud to have worked with them on workshops for new veteran farmers like Bob Jackson, who Farm Credit has helped start a honey and bee business. Mr. Speaker, again, I congratulate Farm Credit on their 100th anniversary, and I look forward to continuing to work with them to support Florida farmers. Thank you, and Congressman Scott, I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you, Ms. Graham. I now yield as much time as he may consume to the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. ROUZER.
I thank my friend and the gentleman from Georgia. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize the Farm Credit System for supporting agriculture and the rural communities in my home state of North Carolina for the past 100 years. Established in 1916, Farm Credit provides farm families across America with consistent and reliable credit to help finance our nation's food production needs. Without farm credit services, our farmers would not have the resources they need to grow their crops and their livestock, putting food on the table of every American family. And let me underscore that, putting food on the table of every American family. Farm credit organizations provide more than a third of the credit needed by the United States agriculture, accounting for more than $217 billion in loans, leases, and related services. In my home district, our local farm lender is Cape Fear Farm Credit, which operates in a 12-county territory and issues loans to more than 2,500 farmers and rural North Carolinians. I applaud them for supporting farm families in my district with real estate and farm improvement loans, equipment loans, operating loans, country home loans, life insurance plans, and appraisal services. Cape Fear Farm Credit also helps young, beginning, small, and minority farmers become successful by offering courses that provide not only them but their families with a unique set of tools to increase the quality and size of their operations. Without a doubt, Cape Fear Farm Credit is an incredibly valuable resource for our farm families and our rural communities in North Carolina's 7th Congressional District. Our friends at Farm Credit should be proud of their great work. They have successfully delivered on their mission for the past 100 years, and I know they will continue to have great success. They are great and fine people who understand the unique needs of agricultural production, our farm families, and our rural communities. And Mr. Speaker, I am proud to stand with them. I yield back my time.
Thank you, Mr. ROUZER. I now yield to the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Moulinaire, as much time as he may consume.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the two gentlemen actually from Georgia for hosting this hour and to celebrate 100 years of farm credit and the important role it has played in our country. For the past 100 years, farm credit has made vital contributions to the success of Michigan's 4th Congressional District and our agricultural community, which includes over 10,000 farms and 15,000 farm operators. Farm credit has allowed farmers and growers to invest in their operations with new equipment and buildings in good times, and in tough times it has provided crop insurance and helped family farmers keep their land. Farm credit has helped Michigan farmers put healthy, delicious food on the tables of millions of people. And in my district specifically, it has contributed to a district-wide output of $1.7 billion in products sold across the country and around the world. And these profits come back to our rural communities and help to keep them strong. Mr. Speaker, farm credit has made America a more prosperous nation, and I hope it will enjoy another 100 years of continued success. Thank you, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you, and I'd like to recognize now, for as much time as he may consume, gentleman from California, Mr. LaMalfa.
Well, thank you to the gentleman, Mr. Scott, for having this special order here tonight, for this opportunity to be able to speak and recognize our friends at the farm credit system. So I'm glad to join my colleagues in doing so, because they've been a great service to agriculture and rural communities for that 100 years. It was originally enacted by Congress and signed into law by President Wilson 100 years ago. It played a very valuable and vital role in sustaining agriculture in our nation. While many things have changed in the last 100 years, one thing is not: the need to feed and clothe our nation. The farm credit system exists to help farmers and ranchers meet this challenge while also adapting to meet the ever-changing agricultural needs. For example, right now the median age for farmers, as was mentioned by the other Mr. Scott, is around 60 years old, with farmers who are 75 years and up outnumbering those who are in their 20s and 30s. We have to do more to give those young people hope and an opportunity to be viable and have stability in their occupation they would choose. With the population expected to increase by over 2 billion at least by 2050, and as prices for farmland and equipment significantly increase, the concerns over having to have enough farmers to feed the world are very real. Farm credit initiatives have helped younger farmers not only access to the financial tools necessary to get started, but also the education and advice they need to grow their business for years to come. More generally, farm credit is vital to managing the everyday risks and uncontrollable variables farmers face, such as the weather, natural disasters, or market distortions. Just this spring, in my part of California, high winds and heavy rain, even hail, have helped to shrink California's prune crop to half or less of its normal size, with some growers losing their entire crop for the year and some not being able to even recover their costs for harvesting, therefore not harvesting at all. This is on top of devastating profit losses and cutbacks due to the ongoing drought in the state of California. While insurance certainly comes nowhere close to making up for these losses or even breaking even, it helps farmers survive another year to get by so they can continue growing the food, hopefully in that next good following year, as they faithfully go out to their fields, their orchards, their vineyards, to produce what Americans want and need. This helps keep our communities and local economies strong. I'm proud to stand today with my colleagues to join in recognizing the critical role the farm credit system has played for over 100 years in supporting our farmers and ranchers throughout rural communities across the country. Let's do everything we can to hold on to this vital piece of rural America and keeping food on the table for all Americans and those around the world that depend on it as well. I thank you for the time, and I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Lamothe. I now yield as much time as he may consume to Mr. Conaway from Texas, the gentleman from Texas, the chairman of the House Agriculture Committee.
Well, I thank my fellow colleague on the Ag Committee for hosting tonight's hour and for yielding me time. Mr. Speaker, today I rise to commend the Farm Credit System for 100 years of service to rural America and the agriculture industry. The importance of the Farm Credit System is largely unknown to those outside of agriculture, often leaving it prone to political attacks. However, its importance to those it serves has never been greater, as declining commodity prices have led to a sharp downturn in the farm economy. Thankfully, the Farm Credit System and its members have been there to help lessen that burden. To understand the Farm Credit System, it's important to look back at its roots. In the early 1900s, credit was largely unavailable or unaffordable in many parts of rural America, and lenders avoided agricultural loans due to the associated risks. In 1908, President Theodore Roosevelt appointed a commission to explore the problem and ultimately found a need to develop more cooperatives and a cooperative credit system for farmers. From that idea, Congress passed the Federal Farm Loan Act of 1916, eventually resulting in the establishment of the Farm Credit System, a system created to provide a permanent, reliable source of credit to American agriculture. The Farm Credit System's mission has evolved over time. For example, in 1980, Congress empowered the Farm Credit System to provide valuable capital for infrastructure necessary for communities to thrive. Since its inception, the Farm Credit System has never wavered in its mission of providing lines of credit to rural communities in good times and in bad. During the late 1980s, our farmers and ranchers faced particularly difficult times. Fortunately, the agriculture industry and the Farm Credit System were able to weather the storm together and emerged even more prepared for the years to come. Today, I believe that the Farm Credit System is fundamentally safe and sound and in a position to endure the challenges that will inevitably face. To acknowledge and celebrate a century of dedicated service to rural America, I'm proud to sponsor House Resolution 591 commemorating Farm Credit's 100th anniversary. Providing more than $237 billion in loans to more than 500,000 customers, the Farm Credit System has worked tirelessly in all 50 states to ensure a vibrant rural economy, and I am proud to congratulate them on their 100 years of good work and the system we have in place today. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Speaker, I again want to thank all of my colleagues for taking time to come down here and recognize all of the great things that Farm Credit has done in the past 100 years. I want to thank all of the people that have been a part of the Farm Credit System over the past 100 years. And I want to thank the men and women that are out there working every day on the farm to make sure that Americans have the food and fiber that they need. May God continue to bless them. And thank you, Mr. Speaker. I now yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. The gentleman yields back. Pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1, the House stands in recess, subject to the call of the Chair.